Act 1 of Miss Buzby's Borders by Arthur Lewis Tubbs. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Miss Buzby's Borders, a comedy in 3 acts. Characters:
Jerome Townsend, a lover somewhat in the background, read by Tommy Hersant.
Felix Marden, who is not afraid to come to the front, read by Adrian Stephens.
Mr. Smith, a mysterious individual, read by Todd.
Alexander Pettifer, a worm that finally turns, read by Alan Mapstone.
Jimmie Spangler, a song and dance artist, read by David Purdy.
Marguerite Marr, a star in vaudeville, read by Jennifer Pratt.
Lillian Wendale, by the villain still pursued, read by Ashley Jane.
Pansy Purple, read by Kelly Taylor.
Amelia Buzby from the country, who keeps boarders in the city, read by AvailleMrs.
Mrs. Pettifer, with a mind of her own and willing to speak it, read by T.J. Burns.
Florinda, who is generally on hand, read by AvailleMrs.
Stage Directions, read by Devorah Allen. Synopsis: Act 1, Parlor of Miss Buzby's boarding house in Harlem, New York City. A morning in December. Act 2, Marguerite Marr's dressing room at the theater. Afternoon of the same day. Act 3, same as Act 1. About 11 o'clock that evening. Costumes and characteristics. Jerome Townsend. A good-looking, well-dressed young man, about 25. Dark business or street suit, same in Act 1 and Act 2. For Act 3, may change to evening clothes if desired. Felix Marden. A handsome, dashing man of the world, about 30 years of age. Somewhat fast, with a dissipated look and reckless manner. Not a stage Johnny, but a man of wealth with the air of a successful lady-killer. Elegant street suit in Act 2. In Act 3, evening clothes. Mr. Smith. Middle-aged, keen-eyed man, with an assumed manner of absent-mindedness. Plain suit of fairly good material, same throughout. Alexander Pettifer. A small, insignificant-looking man, of the discouraged, henpecked variety. Timid and shrinking, particularly before his wife, until his metamorphosis in Act 3. Then he assumes an aggressive manner as a decided contrast. Neat business suit. Jimmie Spangler. Typical young vaudeville song and dance man, rather loud, but sincere and good-natured. In Act 2 he wears his stage get-up, a neat-fitting checked suit, with fancy necktie, derby hat, dancing pumps, etc. Act 3, up-to-date suit, with a suggestion of loudness, red tie, etc. Marguerite Marr. A tall, handsome vaudeville vocalist, of the stately showgirl type. She has a trace of cheap vulgarity, not pronounced enough to be offensive, and speaks slang unconsciously. A whole-hearted, lovable young woman, outspoken, but sympathetic and sincere. In Act 1, she wears a handsome street dress with coat and hat. Act 2, an elaborate stage gown. Act 3, similar to Act 1. Lillian Wendale. Attractive girl of about 19 or 20, timid, and with an evident fear of danger. She wears in Act 1 a plain dark dress. Similar attire, with wraps and thick veil, in Act 2. Act 3, costume a little more cheerful and becoming, but not elaborate. Pansy Purple. Gay, spirited girl of 18. The customary soubrette, a bit bold and forward, but by no means offensive. Act 1, somewhat conspicuously arrayed in a handsome outdoor costume with wraps. Act 2, gorgeous, short-skirted dancing costume, trimmed with purple pansies, as fancy and pretty as possible. Act 3, same as or similar to Act 1. Amelia Buzby, plain, typical old maid, still countrified, though living in the city. Prim, precise, and comical, but not a caricature. She is about 45 years of age, face without much color, and somewhat wrinkled. Hair combed straight back and done up in a knot behind, or crimped in front. No antiquated side curls. Wears plain house dress in Act 1. Her best gown with wrap and bonnet in Act 2, and in Act 3 a colored dress with some fixings, or same as Act 2. Mrs. Pettifer, a large, portly woman, loud of voice and domineering in manner, the typical gossipy boarder. Plain morning gown in Act 1. In Act 3, black or brown silk, profusely trimmed with a show of old-fashioned jewelry. Florinda, a colored maid of the Topsy variety, mischievous and bubbling over with fun. Dark dress with white apron, hair tied up with ribbons in Act 1. In Act 2, her best dress, decidedly gay, with hat trimmed with bright ribbons and feather. Act 3, same as Act 1. Properties: several letters, sealed, stamped, and addressed. Book: theatrical makeup materials, grease paint, hare's foot, powder, rouge, chamois cloth, hand mirror, comb, brush, etc. Assortment of costumes, hats, a few sheets of music, playbills, posters, trunks, etc., as seen in a theater dressing room. Smelling salts, cards, pieces of paper, pen and ink. Large bouquet of roses. Crochet work or sewing. Dollar bill. Act 1. Scene: parlor of Amelia Buzby's boarding house in New York City. A comfortable room with somewhat old-fashioned and rather dilapidated furniture, with a few better pieces. Several pictures evidently brought from the country, and one or two more up-to-date. Table with spread down right center. Sofa left. Chairs, etc. Double doors center, in flat, with portieres. Discover Mrs. Pettifer, dressed for the street, standing center, buttoning gloves. As curtain rises, Florinda enters left, with several letters.
Oh, is that the mail, Florinda?
Yes'm. Just coming in, Mom.
Is there any for me? I'll just look it over.
Holds out hand.
Miss Buzby, she done told me to give it to her first, Mom. She might scold me if I didn't do it.
Ha! I guess she wouldn't scold you for letting me see if I had any mail. Let me see.
Takes letters, looks them over curiously.
No, there isn't. But there might have been.
I know there won't.
Here's one for Miss Wendale, though. In a man's writing, too. The same I saw on one yesterday. She must hear from him pretty often, seems to me. Ha! I don't just like the looks of it.
Ever try looking into other way, ma'am? So till you wouldn't see quite so much?
What's that? You're an impudent child, Florinda, and I shall report you to your mistress.
La sakes, Mum, I don't care if you does. She done said the very same thing herself.
Said what?
Why, you didn't never miss much what's going on. Yes, she did, Mum, 'cause I done heard her say it.
Oh, she did she? I'm glad you told me. So that's the way she talks about her boarders, is it? I'll leave her house when our week's up. So that's what Miss Buzby said, is it? Oh, indeed.
Yes'm. Goodbye when you go, Mum.
She goes right, giggling. Mrs. Pettifer has laid the letters on table. Enter right Marguerite Marr. She looks at letters, finds one or two for herself, opens and reads one.
Good morning, Miss Marr. You wasn't down to breakfast this morning.
Good morning, Mrs. Pettifer. No, I wasn't up. I don't get to bed very early, you know, so I generally sleep late.
Mrs. Pettifer, having paused, left.
Oh, I see. Well, of all things in the world, being an actress is the last business I'd choose. I think it's a shocking thing for any woman to go into.
Do you?
I most certainly do. Catch me up there making an exhibition of myself before folks.
I should hope not, but one doesn't have to go on the stage to make an exhibition of oneself. I have seen people do it, well, in boarding houses, for instance.
Oh, you have? If you mean anything personal, I must say you're a bold piece. Huh, but what can you expect from an actress? And I want you to understand I'm a respectable woman. I wouldn't go inside of a theater. I consider them the abode of Satan.
You must know our stage manager. That's what some of us call him, only not in quite such polite terms. But there are such things as theatrical angels, too. We are all looking for them, to put us up among the stars, you know.
No, I don't know, and I don't want to know. I think such talk is just sacrilegious. I don't know what the world's coming to.
Well, a good share of it is coming to our show. We are packing the house twice a day. I pride myself I help do it, too. You ought to come and see my skit.
Oh, you act skittish, do you? That's about the idea I had of it. I ain't a mite surprised. I wish I could do something to reform.
Oh, now really, Miss Pettifer. Do you think I need it?
Straightening up.
If I do say it, my form, is one thing I feel proud of.
Mrs. Pettifer shows disgust. Starts to go.
But really, Mrs. Pettifer, you have no right to judge us when you boast of never entering a theater. Come some day and see for yourself. I'll be pleased to get you a couple of passes.
What? Me? No, thank you. I wouldn't think of such a thing.
Florinda, who has stood back, listening intently.
You might give me that pass, Miss Ma. I'd rather go to the theater and eat.
Yes, you little heathen. I warned you would. Don't you uphold her in it, Miss Marr. If you do, you'll have it to answer for.
Starting to go right, then coming back, speaking mysteriously.
By the way, Miss Marr, what do you think of that Miss Wendale? Don't it seem to you sometimes that she, well, I kind of wonder now and then what there is about her. Ain't you never thought about it?
Florinda pretends to be busy about room, but listens carefully.
No, I can't say that I have in particular. If I have thought anything, it's that she seems to be a refined and ladylike young woman.
My, I didn't know actresses could be so charitable. For my part, I don't agree with you. I think it looks suspicious when a woman lives alone so and never tells a soul who she is or where she comes from or anything about herself.
Mr. Smith enters, center door from right, reading a book. He pauses upstage, not noticing the others.
I don't see.
Mrs. Pettifer, seeing Mr. Smith.
Oh, good morning, Mr. Smith.
Mr. Smith, without looking up.
Good morning.
Mrs. Pettifer, going to him, laying her hand on his arm and looking about cautiously.
Why, Mr. Smith, I wanted to ask you what is your opinion of Miss Wendale?
Mr. Smith, still reading, absent-mindedly.
My opinion is that the author has not fully substantiated the claim which... Eh?
Looking up.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Did you speak to me, Mrs. Oh, really, madam, your name has escaped me.
My name is Mrs. Pettifer, and my husband is Mr. Pettifer. Land, you ought to know it. You sat next to us at the table long enough.
Oh, yes, to be sure. Pettifer. Mr. and Mrs. Pettifer.
No, not Pettifer, nor Pettifer. Pettifer. But I asked you a question. I said, what is your opinion?
Yes, so you did. My opinion is that it will be a pleasant day if it doesn't storm.
Land, I never saw such a man.
Marguerite laughs. Florinda is fairly convulsed with mirth.
Well, I don't see anything to laugh at. I think it's sad when a man ain't got a grain of sense. Florinda, stop that giggling. I shall tell your mistress how you behave, insulting her boarders. I don't know as it's to be wondered at, though, with the example you have.
Going up left.
I never saw such a set of folks. I never did.
Exits center door to right, indignantly.
Some people aren't at all backward about expressing their opinions, and as for prying, that woman ought to be placed on exhibition as the human crowbar.
Deed and she had, miss. Ain't nothing she don't investigate.
But it doesn't look well for you to talk about her, Florinda. You better go and see if there isn't something you ought to do.
Florinda, upright.
Yes'm, I's gwine to. I's got enough to do, sure thing. Miss Buzby, she's done see to that.
Near exit.
Ma'am, you done go and give Miss Pettifer that our pass, miss?
No, Florinda, I guess I'll have to give it to you someday, if you're a good girl.
Oh, I's gwine to be good. Yes, indeedy, I is. Gwine to be good as one of them our tactical angels you done just told about. Yes, indeedy, I is.
Exit right, nodding her head to one side, as if to emphasize her words.
Dear me, I hope you'll be better than that, or you will never deserve to get even into the nigger heaven.
Mr. Smith continues reading, but does not miss anything that is going on. Marguerite regards him intently a moment.
That must be a very interesting book you're reading, Mr. Smith.
What's that? Oh, yes, it is. Very interesting.
What is it about?
Why, it's about...
About a woman with secrets and a man who is trying to catch her in a trap, perhaps. A man who pretends to be what he isn't, but who cannot fool one woman who sees through him. Is it anything like that, Mr. Smith?
Mr. Smith, slightly startled in spite of himself, but quickly regaining his self-possession.
No, it is not anything like that, Miss whatever your name is. It is not a novel, and it is not...
But it is a novel situation, nevertheless. Come now, Mr. whatever your name is, for it isn't Smith. You might as well drop that little mask you're wearing, at least for me. I've been watching you, as you have been watching somebody else, and... Well, you may fool the other poor innocents in this establishment, but me you have run up against a different proposition. I get around and see things, I do, and I've learned to know a sham from the real thing. Your name isn't Smith, and you are not absent-minded, and you are not interested in that book. So, you see, you are discovered.
Indeed, you are a most discerning young woman, I must admit. But you are going a little too fast this time. Talk about human crowbars.
Good. That's the time you got back to me, and it goes to prove that you are not as stupid as you look. I mean, pretend. You may be a good actor, but I know acting when I see it. And this is too much like a play to deceive little Marguerite. You needn't be afraid, though. I'm not going to give your little game away. But I should like to know just what you're up to. You don't seem to be the heartless villain exactly.
Looks off right.
But here comes the heroine. The plot thickens.
Mr. Smith had, for the moment, dropped to some extent his assumed manner, but resumes it as Lillian Wendale enters right. Marguerite notices him and smiles to herself knowingly. She goes and meets Lillian, who is pale and appears to be somewhat weak.
Good morning, Miss Wendale. I'm afraid you're not feeling very well this morning.
No, I didn't sleep much and have a bad headache. I have just had a cup of coffee, and I think it will help me. I wanted to see if I have any mail.
The letters have been left on the table, right center. Mr. Smith has several times glanced at them keenly, is now about to take them up, but is prevented by Marguerite, who seizes them quickly, picks out the one for Lillian, and hands it to her, with a swift, exultant glance at Mr. Smith. He pretends not to notice her, but watches Lillian out of the corners of his eyes. He is down right, Marguerite center, and Lillian left center. Lillian takes her letter, thanks Marguerite, and sits. She opens letter and reads, with some agitation, which she is not able wholly to hide. Mr. Smith slyly watches her. Marguerite prepares to go. Enter Amelia Buzby, left.
Good morning. Oh, is that you, Miss Wendale? I didn't know you was up yet. Ain't feeling any too well, are you?
I am all right, thank you, Miss Buzby.
Well, I'm real glad to hear it. So you're here too, Mr. Smith, as sociable as ever.
Marguerite, up left, about to go.
Oh, yes, he's been talking a blue streak. It's almost impossible for anybody else to get a word in edgeways. Well, I must be off. I'll be late at rehearsal as it is, and that means a fine. It's all your fault, too, Mr. Smith, for being so perfectly fascinating.
Mr. Smith scowls, but says nothing. The others smile.
I'll risk you any time when it comes to getting a word in, Miss Marr.
Now, Miss Buzby, well, it's a good thing somebody around here looks on the bright side of things. If I had time, I'd stay now and do a song and dance to liven you up a bit. But I must skip and do the skittish act, as our friend Mrs. Pettifer calls it. So long.
Exit left.
Land, ain't she a piece? Well, she's about right. If it wasn't for her, I guess we'd all be in the dumps most of the time. I thought when I come to the city to take boarders, I'd find it as lively as a circus. But I declare it ain't much better'n Juniper Will. As I said before, if it wasn't for Miss Marr...
You forget Mr. and Mrs. Pettifer.
Particularly the Mrs.
Well, I must admit she ain't one of the quiet kind. But as for that man of hers, I ain't got no use for such a man. Nor any other kind, for that matter. It ain't that I never had an offer, you needn't think. No, sir, I've had plenty of them. But I had some sense, and 'tis a good thing I did, after all the married misery I've seen. Ain't I about right, Mr. Smith?
Really, I don't know as I have any opinion on the subject, Miss Buzby. You might ask Miss Wendale. Perhaps she...
Miss Wendale? Land, what does she know about it? If you ain't the funniest man.
Notices Lillian, who has tottered and seems about to faint. Runs and supports her.
Why, Miss Wendale, you're sick. You'd better go and lay down, and I'll send for the doctor.
No, thank you. It is nothing. I'm not very strong, that's all. I will go to my room.
Yes, I would. You come right along and I'll help you.
They go off right. Mr. Smith stands looking after them with a satisfied smile, nodding his head knowingly. Voice of Mrs. Pettifer heard off right. Mr. Smith goes out right, first entrance, as Mr. and Mrs. Pettifer enter. Center door right.
Don't you talk to me, Alexander Pettifer. I say, I saw you. You stood on the corner talking to that woman. I suppose she's someone you know well and go to see.
Why,
Yes, you do, too. Sometimes you're out of my sight for a whole hour.
But...
No, sir. I don't believe you was just telling her the way to some place.
Don't
talk to me. I know just what you'd say. It's the same old story, and I don't believe a word of it. You're like all the rest of the men.
But, my dear,
I ain't your dear. You don't love me, and...
Suddenly changing her tone, looking up.
Who was that woman, anyway?
She...
Oh, she was? A perfect stranger, was she? I don't believe it. It was some woman you love better than you do me. Oh, Alexander, how can you treat me so? Me, your own confiding little wife. You know how I lean on you, like a clinging vine to the strong oak. And yet, you go and treat me like this. Oh, dear, you'll break my tender, trusting heart.
She is seated right center, rocks back and forth, again weeping.
Now, darling,
You needn't deny it. You treat me shamefully. You know you do. Some day you'll be sorry when I'm laid away in the silent tomb.
Mr. Pettifer, under his breath.
Silent?
What's that? You're a cruel, heartless man, and you never loved me.
He attempts to make up to her. She pushes him away.
No use your coaxing, Alexander Pettifer. You can't pull the wool over my eyes. My heart is broken.
Covers her face, weeping. He stands watching her a moment, then makes a movement of disgust, as if swearing, and exits quietly right, unnoticed by her.
No. Don't tell me how sorry you are. I shan't listen.
Pause.
You'd go right off and do the same thing over again, wouldn't you, Alexander, eh?
Pause.
Alexander, would you? Are you sure, dear? Why?
Looks up, sees that he is gone.
Why, he's gone. Just as I was going to forgive him, too, the mean thing.
Jumps up in a rage.
I'll give it to him for that. He'll see he can't.
Starts to go out right, first entrance. Runs into Mr. Smith. He does not notice her.
Land, why don't you look where you're going? I never saw such a man. Say, see here, what are you anyway?
I'm busy reading.
Oh, you are? Well, it's my opinion you're the queerest acting man I ever saw. What's your business?
My own.
Huh! I suppose you mean... Well, anyway, I'm going to ask you something. What do you think about Miss Wendale?
Miss Wendale?
Yes, if that's her name. Don't you think it's kind of queer the way she does and acts? Why, she never tells anybody a thing about herself. Who she is, where she come from, or anything. Seems to me it looks mighty suspicious.
I wouldn't condemn a woman simply because she has the rare faculty among women of keeping something to herself.
Indeed. So you're like the rest of the men after all, captivated by every doll face that comes along. There's Mr. Pettifer. If I didn't watch him, he'd run after every good-looking thing that had skirts on. That actress, for instance, the bold piece. I don't see why Miss Buzby lets her stay here. To my mind, the theater is a low amusement.
Yes. Now, I have found it rather high, unless you go up in the gallery, and then it is both. Have you ever been to one?
Once. Mr. Pettifer took me to see a play called The Black Crook. I thought it was going to be a Negro minstrel show when we went in, but I declare it was the most shocking thing. I never saw such an exhibition. Why, there was as much as 100 girls, and all they had on together wouldn't have made one respectable dress. And as true as I'm standing here, Mr. Pettifer seemed to enjoy it. The best I could do, I couldn't make him go till 'twas all over. Said he'd paid $1 apiece for our tickets, and he wasn't going to be cheated out of it.
Mr. Smith, forgetting himself and speaking in a natural manner, smiling.
Good for Pettifer.
What's that?
Mr. Smith quickly resuming his abstracted manner.
Oh, I mean, it is good for Mr. Pettifer to have such a watchful, careful wife.
Oh, well, I should say so. That reminds me. I wonder where he is now. I must go and see.
Yes, it might not be safe to leave him to himself so long.
Eh? What do you mean by that? For that matter, I never saw the man yet that was to be trusted out of sight.
Goes to center door, runs into Florinda, who enters from right, hurriedly.
My goodness! Why don't you look where you're going? I never saw such a child.
Exit to right. Florinda looking after her, making a face.
I don't care, you old steamboat, you. Wouldn't she make you sick?
Exit left. Mr. Smith stands looking off to left a moment, then dodges back as Florinda re-enters center door left, showing in Jerome Townsend.
Who'll I tell her 'tis, mister?
Here is my card.
Takes card from pocket, hands it to Florinda.
Yes, sir, I'll give it to her.
Going right.
My, ain't he stylish?
Exit right. Jerome stands or sits down left. Mr. Smith looks at him unseen. Again conceals himself, as Miss Buzby enters right.
Good morning, sir. You wish to see Miss Wendale?
Yes, please. She is in?
Yes, she's in, but she ain't very well this morning. She feels some better now, though. You're the first caller she's had since she come here more'n 2 weeks ago. I suppose you're a friend of hers?
Why, yes, I am.
Well, you look like a real nice man.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I thought it kind of queer, her being here the way she is, no callers or anything. Of course, it's her own business, as I tell the rest of my boarders. She always pays her board and is a perfect lady. I'll say that for her, and, well, it's my candid opinion that she's better than some of them that talk about her.
So, they do talk about her?
Well, you know, I suppose it's kind of natural, seeing she keeps to herself so and all. Mercy, no, it ain't that I ever thought anything, or if I had, you may be sure. Well, you see, I pride myself around a first-class, very genteel boarding-house. Of course.
Sees Lillian, who enters right.
Oh, here she is. Miss Wendale, he's a friend come to see you. I hope he'll cheer you up.
Lillian goes and shakes hands with Jerome. They strive to act like mere friends, but have some difficulty in concealing their real emotions. Miss Buzby goes up right, about to go out, catches a glimpse of Mr. Smith, who is in center door. He dodges back, but not in time to escape notice, and is compelled to come forward.
Why, Mr. Smith, is that you? You give me a start.
Yes, you see, I left my book and came back to look.
Why, what's that in your hand?
Mr. Smith looks at the book in his hand.
In my... Oh, yes, to be sure. But this is not the one. Excuse me, perhaps it is in my room. I will go and see.
Exit right, after a surreptitious but keen look at Jerome, who also gives him a searching look. Lillian appears somewhat perturbed. Miss Buzby up left.
Sometimes I think that man must be crazy or half-witted. He acts so queer. Land, ain't the world full of freaks? Only we never seem to think we're one of them.
Exit left. Jerome and Lillian, who have been down left, now come to center. He clasps her in his arms, kissing her. She submits to his embrace for an instant, then draws away, looking about apprehensively.
Jerome, be careful. If someone should see.
And if they should?
Have you forgotten what it might mean?
Ah, I understand. Well, we will be careful. But it has been so long since I saw you last, dear. It was cruel of you not to let me know where you were for so long, to write to me and yet give me no address.
But I knew you would come if I did, and I waited until I thought it was safe. And now, after all my precaution, you have come just at the wrong minute.
But, Lillian, dear, you told me I might...
Yes, but that was yesterday. Today my suspicions of that man were awakened. I feel sure that he is watching me, that he has been set upon my track by the man whose one purpose is revenge.
I think you make too much of it. You imagine dangers which do not exist, and magnify a molehill into a mountain of peril. Oh, come, go with me. Let the man you think your enemy do his worst, and trust me to protect you. Believe me, it will come out all right, and everything will be for the best.
Ah, if I could only believe you. But I know my danger, and if you knew all, you would not give me such advice.
Then you must tell me all, that I may know how to help and protect you. Is there something back of it that I don't understand?
Yes. He has me in his power, though I am guiltless of any wrong. You know, When my father died, he left practically nothing, and I was obliged to do something to earn my living. As I had a good musical education, I began to teach music. Among my pupils was a young girl named Alice Marden. Twice a week I went to her home to give her a lesson, and one day I met her brother. That day seems to have been the most unlucky of my life. He was handsome, cultured, and, apparently, a gentleman. And I was weak and foolish enough to believe him when he professed to have fallen in love with me and asked me to marry him. I thought then that I loved him, but I see now that it was only infatuation. He promised me so much, and it looked so much like happiness that for a time I believed him. It was not long, however, before my eyes were opened.
He was a villain.
Yes, but thank heaven I found it out before it was too late. A maid in the house, whom he had also professed to love, warned me, and I escaped. We were to have been secretly married, and when I told him that I found him out, and told him never to speak to me again, he at first pleaded with me, then became so angry that I feared he would kill me. I got away, however, but he swore to be revenged and to make me suffer. He has done it too. He is doing it now. I am in his power.
That is why you are hiding here under an assumed name. I see that, but I don't understand how and why it is. What can he do?
Do? Oh, I cannot possibly tell you. I cannot bear even to speak it. The possibility of what he can and may do, if it comes to the worst, so fills me with terror.
But you can tell me, I who believe in you and love you.
He can...
Here's noise off left.
Someone is coming.
They have been standing close together, down center. Now separate as Florinda enters left, showing in pansy purple.
Oh, howdy do. I hope I don't intrude. I was looking for Miss Marr, but this little black beauty here tells me she's gone to the theater. Thought I'd catch her on my way down.
Yes, I believe Miss Marr left some time ago. She said she had a rehearsal and feared she'd be late.
Oh, that's it. I see. She's getting up her new act. Ever see her do her stunt?
No.
You ain't? Well, have you, mister?
I don't think so. What is her name?
Why, Marguerite Marr. She does a great singing act and changes her dress 4 times. Oh, she's a swell one. But when you come right down to it, she ain't got no mortgage on swell acts. I'm sort of there with the goods myself. S'pose you've heard of me? Pansy Purple. That's me.
Florinda, edging up and looking at her curiously.
Tha's sake, you one of them our actress ladies too?
Sure. Don't I have the appearance? I'm a dancer. On the toes, too. Say, Mam'selle G.D. ain't the only tiptoer on the boards. I can do a few twirls myself.
Go on and show us one.
What? Here? Guess not. This ain't no free show. Besides, I left my dancing togs home on the rosewood piano.
La, ain't that a queer place to keep 'em? Guess you's trying to kid this child, ain't you?
That'll be all for you now. Fade away, little black thundercloud, and let the sun shine.
Florinda going left.
Hee hee, don't she say queer things?
Exit left.
I'm awfully sorry I missed Miss Marr. I wanted to tell her all about things on the way down on the L. Say she's one of the best ever. Ain't many of 'em like her.
Yes, Miss Marr is a true friend, I am sure.
You can just bet she is. And when you find one of them in our profesh, you want to hang on tight. She ain't no jealous cat like most of 'em. When she says a thing, you can bank on it. And she wouldn't go back on her word for the best diamond parara in Tiffany's.
She must be a jewel indeed. I should like to meet her.
That's the way the men all feel. Why, they's plenty of 'em'd give her all the automobiles and champagne suppers she wanted. But no, sir, she ain't that kind. She's one of the few that ain't forgot home and mother, and, but say, I mustn't stand here gabbing. I have to skip.
About to go.
Say, Miss
Wendale.
Miss Wendale, why don't you come to the theatre sometime and see what it's like?
I have thought of it. Miss Marr has asked me several times.
You come. Behind, I mean, where you see the real life.
Indicating Jerome.
You can bring him if you want to.
Thank you. I should like it above all things.
All right. We'll look for you. I'll introduce you to my Jimmie. He's my partner, song and dance, I mean. Him and me get off a lot of guff to start with before we show 'em our feet's terpsichore. How's that? I said it all alone, too. F-E-A-T-S, you know, not the feets we dance with. That's a near joke, ain't it? Sometimes I make real ones, but I ain't in it with Jimmie. We use some of his in our act. Well, goodbye. Remember now, we'll look for you at the theatre before long.
I won't promise, but perhaps.
Well, you better come. It ain't everybody that gets the chance, and we'll show you a dandy time. I've heard Miss Marr speak of you, and she thinks you're just grand.
Jerome, smiling.
And so she is.
Oh, I knew you thought so, all right. You didn't have to show me a diagram of your heart. Well, I'm off. Goodbye. See you later.
Exit. Center door left.
Cheerful little soul, isn't she?
But such manners. I don't like to see a young woman so forward.
No, but she means well, I am sure, and she is only a type. And what of this Miss Marr?
She is not so bad. Something the same, but at least a little more refined. I like her, and somehow I feel that if I ever needed a real friend, she would not fail me.
And what about poor little me?
Why, Jerome, of course you know I meant a woman friend. And you, aren't you more than a friend to me?
My darling, I hope so.
He is about to embrace her, but checks himself as he sees Mr. Smith, who is standing in center door, pretending not to notice them. Lillian, looking around, sees him.
Mr. Smith?
Yes, I was looking.
Seems to me you are always looking, sir. There appears to be no such thing as privacy where you are.
That is my business.
It seems to be your business to spy upon others. But I wish to tell you now, sir, that this young lady is under my protection, and—
Jerome, be careful.
Let him be careful. If he persecutes you, he must answer to me.
Pray don't get excited. It is quite useless. The young lady is entirely safe, so far as I am concerned. You quite misunderstand me. I was only looking for my for Miss Buzby.
Well, she is not here. I will call the servant and send for her.
Goes toward left.
I, too, wish to see her.
You, Jerome? For what?
To tell her that you are going to leave this house at once with me. Go and get ready. I will wait.
He is down left. Lillian goes and speaks aside to him. Mr. Smith stands center door, apparently looking in his book, but furtively watching them.
Not now. I don't dare.
You must if you love and trust me.
You know.
Then do as I say.
I will.
She clasps his hand secretly. They look into each other's eyes lovingly. Then she goes up center, about to go out, but encounters Mr. Smith, who whispers a few words to her.
What do you mean?
Jerome, who had not noticed them, now turns. Jerome going up.
Sir?
Mr. Smith coolly, throwing off his assumed manner and speaking with authority.
The young lady has decided to stay.
He stands center. Lillian takes a few steps and falls fainting into the arms of Jerome, who looks defiantly at Mr. Smith. Curtain. End of Act 1. Act 2 of Miss Buzby's Boarders by Arthur Lewis Tubbs. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Act 2. Scene. Dressing room of a first-class vaudeville theater. Table with mirror over it, right. On table, a profusion of makeup materials. Grease paints, powder, rouge, hare's foot, chamois cloths, etc. Hand mirror, comb and brush, and all necessary articles of the kind. A rather worn-out easy chair left center. Other chairs, trunks, posters, etc. Several dresses and stage costumes, hanging up and lying about. The room should appear somewhat untidy and mixed up, though better than the average theatrical dressing apartment, being that of a star. The only door is in flat, left center. Discover Marguerite, in an elaborate stage costume, seated before mirror, right, putting the finishing touches on her makeup. There is a tap on door center.
Come in.
The door is opened a crack, and Jimmie Spangler sticks his head in. Marguerite looks around.
Oh, that you, Jimmie? Come on in.
Jimmie, coming through door, closing it carefully behind him.
Say, Miss Ma, you got time to listen to my tale of woe?
Goodness me, Jimmie, you don't mean to say you've got another one of them things. You're a regular something or other of nine tails, seems to me, and all woe ones.
But this one is. Honest Injuns. I just come pretty near doing things out there.
Well, what now? Pansy again, I suppose. Another quarrel?
It's going to be. A regular flare-up this time. You know how long-suffering I am, as the poor heroine says. Well, ain't I?
Marguerite laughing.
I didn't say you wasn't.
No, but you looked it. Oh, I know it ain't nothing new, us having scraps, but this is the worst ever. She's gone the limit this time.
Poor little Pansy, what has she done now? Looked at some other man, I suppose.
Looked at him? Say, if that was all, I'd simply slap her on the wrist and say, "Don't you do that again, you naughty little goyle," and let it go at that. But she smiled at him, and winked.
Pansy did?
Yes, Pansy did. I seen her do it.
Oh, well, she knew you were looking and did it just to make you jealous. Jimmie, you're easy, and Pansy knows it. Just as long as you let her, she'll torment you just this way.
Oh, I'm on to all that all right. But you're going too fast. Wait a bit. It ain't so much what she done, it's who the man was. Who do you think?
Oh, some Johnny, I suppose. Pansy doesn't care a snap for any of 'em. She just does it to see you take on. That's because she really loves you. If you wasn't blind...
Hold your horses, please, and hear his name. It was someone you know pretty well.
Oh, was it? Tell me who, if you want to. I guess I can stand it.
Well, it was that dude of a Marden. That's who it was.
Marguerite, rising.
Felix Marden? Do you mean to say he has been flirting with Pansy?
Yes, with my Pansy. I thought you'd be jealous when you heard who 'twas.
Jealous? Oh, yes, I'm jealous. It must be stopped at once. At once, before it goes a step further.
Sure thing it must. If it ain't, I'll break his head. As for Pansy, she'll find out.
Send her to me.
Oh, you needn't bother. I can give her all the trouble she wants. You tend to Marden, and I'll see that Pansy gets to Wilton.
I want to see her now, at once. Go and send her to me.
You needn't be too hard on her, you know. Remember the pills she's got to swallow from me.
I won't hurt her. I have something to say to her, though, and the sooner it's said, the better.
He is indoor.
When I get through with her, Jimmie, maybe you won't need to give her any pill. No, I ain't gonna hurt her. Go on, quick.
All right. I'll leave her to you, while I go push my fist through that blamed Masha's face.
Exit center door.
Jimmie, don't... Oh, dear, I'm afraid that boy'll get into trouble.
Going back to table, resuming her making up.
I declare, real life is more like a play than the best thing Shakespeare or Clyde Fitch ever wrote.
After a slight pause, enter Pansy. She is somewhat excited, vainly tries to act as if nothing were the matter.
Hello, Margie. Jimmie said you wanted to see me?
Yes, Pansy, I do.
Motioning to chair by her side.
Sit down here by me.
Well, fire away. What is it? You'll have to cut it short, for it's almost time for our act.
Oh, it won't take long, what I have to say. It's just this. Pansy, I'm surprised at you.
Surprised? My goodness, I'd like to know what I've been doing now.
I guess you know all right. Ain't you ashamed to treat Jimmie the way you do and him so good to you?
Oh, he's been stuffing you with some kind of moonshine, the jealous old thing. I don't see what you want to always believe him for, anyway, instead of me.
It ain't only what he tells me, Pansy, it's what I see. Haven't I told you not to have anything to do with that Mr. Marden?
Oh, ho! So that's it. Just what I thought. Jealous yourself. If he happens to like me, it ain't exactly my fault, is it?
It's your fault if you lead him on by flirting with him. As for my being jealous, that's ridiculous, and you know it. I don't care a rap for him, but I do care a good deal for you, Pansy, and I don't mean to let him get you in his clutches.
Pansy, rising, walking to center.
Clutches. That's good. Clutches. I like that. But you needn't worry. I'm more'n 7. I can look out for myself.
You can't. You haven't as much sense as a peanut would hold.
Oh, thank you.
About some things, I mean. Now tell me, how far has it gone, your flirtation with this man?
Well, I don't care. If you and Jimmie didn't keep at me all the time. He ain't got no string on me, or you either.
Marguerite. She has risen and now goes close to Pansy. They are down center.
That doesn't answer my question. Tell me, Pansy. I want to save you if I can.
Goodness me. Who'd ever take you for a vaudeville actress? You ought to be in the Salvation Army, rescuing fallen females.
Pansy, aren't you ashamed of yourself? Heaven knows I don't set myself up as being good, but it's no sign I can't be decent just because I'm a vaudeville actress. It's acting the way you do, and half the time not meaning anything by it, that makes folks think we're what they think we hadn't ought to be. Oh, I'm not saying you're bad, Pansy dear. All is, I don't want you to be.
Putting her arm about her.
Come now, tell me, this man?
Why, nothing. Only, well, he's rich, you know, and fine-looking. And, well, I like to have a good time, of course. So when he kind of made up to me, I didn't exactly turn him down. I just threw him 1 or 2 smiles of mine, and it was just as easy. Then he asked me if I wouldn't like to take a nice automobile ride tonight after the show and have supper at a real swell joint. And as that notion seemed to hit me in about the right spot, I didn't make no objection.
But you won't go?
Well, I ain't so sure but what I will. I don't see why not.
But I see. Pansy, you must listen to me. If you go out with that scoundrel, oh, that's what he is. I know him. It will be all off between you and Jimmie. What's more, I'll wash my hands of you, too. Now, do you think it would be worth all that, an automobile ride and a swell supper? No. You shake him, and you, me, and Jimmie'll go and have a spread of our own, a good one, too. And will you, Pansy?
Takes hold of her shoulders gently with both hands and looks straight into her eyes. Pansy hesitates a moment, trying to look defiantly into Marguerite's eyes, then breaks down, sobbing, and Marguerite embraces her. They stand thus for a brief time. Then Jimmie puts his head indoor.
Say, it's time for our act, Miss Poiple. Going on?
To be sure she is, Jimmie. Going on with you right through life, just as if nothing had happened. Come here.
Jimmie comes part way, then hangs back.
What's the matter with you? Here.
Reaches for his hand, which he finally lets her take.
Pansy has something to say to you. Haven't you, dear?
Pansy turns her face away, hanging her head. Jimmie looks around at her, behind, then in front of Marguerite, trying to get a glimpse of her face. She keeps hiding it from him.
Oh, go on, Pansy. Just say you're sorry, and it'll be all right.
Pansy, say it. You know you are sorry, and you don't mean to ever do it again.
Pansy, without looking up.
Uh-huh.
Sure thing? Do you mean it?
Pansy, hesitating an instant, then looking shyly at him.
Yes, Jimmie. If you'll forgive me.
You bet I will.
Marguerite gets from between them, gently pushing them together. Pansy throws herself impulsively into his arms, and he embraces her rapturously.
Bless you, my children.
Thanks. But say, we'd better hustle out onto that stage. I bet we'll be fined now.
Well, if you are, I'll pay it. Skedaddle.
Jimmie, going to door.
Come on, precious.
Pansy, running over to Marguerite and kissing her.
Oh, you dear.
Goes to Jimmie. He puts his arm around her, and they hasten out. Marguerite going back to table.
Oh dear, sometimes something happens to make a fellow feel happy, even in this business. I wonder if I'll ever finish this makeup.
Resumes work with hare's foot, touching up her complexion, singing softly to herself. In a moment she finishes.
There.
Rises, goes center.
I wonder how my warbler is. La 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 la. I guess she'll do.
Looking over her dress, examining herself in mirror, etc. After a short pause, there is a knocking on door.
Who's that, I wonder?
Another knock.
Come in.
The door is opened, and Felix Marden enters. He carries a large bouquet of roses.
Thank you. So glad you said come in.
Offering her the flowers.
With my compliments.
You are very kind, but I must refuse them.
Oh, no? Why so cruel? Would you break my heart?
Marguerite sarcastically.
Your heart.
Which is all yours.
Oh, chuck it. That don't go down with me. I don't want your flowers. You didn't buy them for me anyway.
Coy, eh? I know your kind.
Again holding out the bouquet.
Come, now.
And I know your kind. The kind that think women their lawful prey, and would just as soon send a woman's soul to perdition as go smoke a cigarette. Your kind. Yeah, oh yes, I know them.
Felix clapping his hands lightly with a sarcastic smile.
Bravo. I didn't know you were such a good actress. You are throwing yourself away on vaudeville. You ought to be thrilling the masses in an emotional part. I shall have to speak to some manager about you.
Oh, hush up. You can't jolly me. I'm serious. See here, Mr. Felix Marden. You've got to call a halt. Understand?
No, I don't understand. You must have a bee in your headpiece or something like that.
Well, I'll put a flea in your ear, and it's one that's going to buzz a bit, too, and let you know it's there. You'll find that you can't come around here and rope in young girls that are engaged to be married and don't know any better than to be dazzled by your fancy manners and your automobiles and champagne suppers. I'm here to prevent it, see?
No, I don't see. Only that you're acting like a subject for the lunatic asylum. I came in here to make you a social call and to give you some flowers, and you fly at me like a wild cat. Nice way to treat an old friend, isn't it?
Friend? You. Not for mine, thank you. It isn't so bad when men of your sort come ogling old-timers like me, who know what you are and how to look out for ourselves. But you can't pick any pansies out of this particular corner of the flower bed.
Why, I don't...
Oh, why, yes, you do, too. Don't tell me you didn't bring those flowers for Pansy Purple, for I know you did. I'm on to your little game, but I've nipped it in the bud, so you might as well take 23 for your number and give us the benefit of your absence.
You'd better beware.
Oh, come now. Don't go to getting stagey. It don't go well with your complexion, and you're a mighty poor actor, so don't try to get off any of your highfalutins on me.
Turns away as if to ignore him, but instantly turns back with an assumption of surprise.
Why, haven't you gone yet? I thought I dismissed you some time ago.
Well, you have another thing coming. I am not so easily dismissed. If you think you can shake me like any little stage door Johnny that doesn't know the ropes, you're very much mistaken.
Indeed. I wish to inform you, Mr. Marden, that this is my private dressing room, and that I entertain who I please in it, and when I don't please, they can stay out. If they don't, I have the privilege and sometimes the extreme pleasure of turning them out. This happens to be one of those extreme pleasure times, so good afternoon.
So that's your game, is it?
No game as I know of, but certainly my intention.
Going to door, holding it open.
I said, good afternoon.
Felix, going up, seizing her hand and angrily pushing the door shut.
And I say you are going too far and had better remember to whom you are talking.
How dare you? I'll have you put out.
Starts to go out. He bars her way.
Oh, no, you won't. I'm not the man you can afford to make an enemy of. More than one woman has had to rue the day she did that. A woman may turn me down, but I'm not one of the kind that swallows a bitter pill and lets it go at that. I get back at them sometime, somehow, if it takes years, understand?
Yes, I understand. You are just what I thought you were. A man who would take revenge on a woman because she wouldn't let you twist her around your little finger. Ugh, I hate and despise such creatures as you. For heaven's sake, get out and let me have a little pure air.
Very well, I'll go, but there will be more of this.
Goes up.
More anon, I suppose, if not sooner? I shan't lose any sleep over it, never fear.
She goes to table left, ignoring him. He starts to exit center door and runs into Miss Buzby, who is just entering.
I beg your pardon.
Bows with a show of mock courtesy. She passes him and comes down. He again starts to go out and collides with Florinda. He gives her a withering look and exits.
My sakes, what's the matter with him? Is he crazy?
Florinda looking after him.
Guess he is sure enough.
Marguerite turning and seeing them.
Why, it's Miss Buzby and Florinda. What under the sun ever brought you here?
The elevated railroad did, as fast as it could scoot. I suppose you think it's queer me coming here like this, but I'm so upset. Somehow it seems just as if you're about the best one I could go to, if you be an actress. I don't suppose they're as bad as folks try to make out, anyway. Leastways, some of them ain't. I thought I'd bring Florindy as a sort o', Well, I thought maybe it'd look better, seeing it was to a theatre, which they do say are such terrible, wicked places. Besides, she was just crazy to come. Fairly begged.
I just felt as if I'd give my head to get inside of a real, sure enough theatre concert, Miss Marr. Is this it for sure?
Yes, Florinda, this is the real thing. But Miss Buzby, what?
I knew you'd want to know, and I didn't waste no time getting here, 'cause I hope we ain't in the way or interfering with your work or anything.
Oh, no, not at all. Only do tell me.
Miss Buzby, who has been standing center. Florinda is circulating about stage, looking into everything.
Can I have a chair?
Oh, excuse me, how thoughtless of me, but you took me so by surprise.
Gives her a chair.
Yes, I suppose I did, but you see, it was this way. Florindy, for goodness sake, do sit down and behave yourself. Don't you meddle into things. I suppose I had not brung her, Miss Marr, but she teased so when she found out where I was coming. Well, I didn't think it looked just right for me to come to a place like this alone, seeing I ain't in the habit of going to theatres anyway, and...
But you are going to tell me what brought you. I'm all on edge with curiosity.
Land, I suppose you be. I almost forgot. Well, you see, it's about that Miss Wendale. You know, it always did seem kind of queer about her, being there alone, the way she was and all. You couldn't really wonder at it that it made some talk, could you, Miss Marr?
No, I suppose not. But what?
Well, you see, this forenoon, soon after you left, a man called to see her. A real handsome man, too, young and stylish. They seem to be real well acquainted, old friends like, and I shouldn't be surprised if it turned out that he's her lover, or used to be. Husband, maybe.
Florinda, who has been at table right, looking into things. Now coming part way down center.
I caught them a kissing her.
Florinda, nobody asked you for any information.
Well, I did, and she seemed to like it too.
Seems to me Florinda's information is decidedly important.
Well, maybe 'tis, but it's her place to wait till she asks to give it. Besides, that's all she knows, and my land, it ain't nothing's very unusual for a young man to kiss a girl, I guess, is it? It's happened before. All is, it does seem kind of mysterious about her and him. And then there's that Mr. Smith, such a funny-acting man as he is, always pretending to be wrapped up in that book or something, but never misses a thing that's going on. It seems he took a hand too, and him and that friend of Miss Wendale's almost had a fight right there in my house, and then she fainted away, and... oh, I'm so upset.
She fans herself with her handkerchief, apparently almost overcome. Marguerite gets small vial from table.
I suppose you are. Here, smell of this. It may help you.
What is it? Camphor?
Smells.
No, salts.
Miss Buzby, sniffing.
Phew. I thought salts was what you took. Real nice, though, ain't they? I believe they do make me feel better. Thanks.
Turns, sees Florinda, who has arrayed herself in one of Marguerite's costumes, and is prancing about, viewing herself in mirror.
For the land's sake, child, what be you up to? Look at that, Miss Marr.
Oh, that's all right. She won't hurt it. Tell me all that happened.
I wished I could be an actress lady like you is, Miss Marr. Ain't that just scrumptious?
You take that right off and put it back where you found it. I declare I'll never take you anywhere again.
And what did Mr. Smith do? I thought all the time he might be a detective.
Miss Buzby, springing up, in great alarm.
For goodness sakes alive, a detective? In my house? You don't believe it.
That's my idea.
Oh, dear, mercy me, a detective.
Shoo, miss? A lawman like puts him into the jailhouse?
Yes, I've been watching him for several days, and I didn't like his actions. I could see plain enough that Miss Wendale was hiding something, and that he was watching her. I don't think she suspected as much until this morning. Then it dawned upon her. And what came of it?
Goodness me, I never was so completely upset in all my born days. What if it should get in the papers and get back to Juniperville? It all comes from living in such a wicked place as the city.
I reckon being wicked is the most fun. Don't catch me living in no country. They ain't got enough houses and folks.
Land, ain't she a regular heathen?
Marguerite, looking at her clock.
It is almost time for my act. Please hurry and tell me what happened. I'm just dying to find out.
Well, and so am I. All I know is Miss Wendale's gentleman friend left after him and Mr. Smith had the fuss. And as for Miss Wendale, she went to her room and locked the door.
And is that all you can tell me?
Every single bit.
Florinda, who has laid aside the costume, now comes down. She is center, Miss Buzby left center, Marguerite right.
Maybe if you was to ask me, I might have some more information. I know some.
Yes, a heap more you know. If you do, why ain't you told it?
'Cause you didn't ask me to. Give me the dickens for what I did tell.
Did you ever? Well, you tell it now, every bit.
Yes, Florinda, tell us all about it.
I wanted a snooping, no sir. But I just kinda kept my eyes open and I couldn't help seeing things.
Then for the land's sake, tell what it was you see.
I's gwine to, if you've give me time. I done see that our detective man make Miss Lillian go into her room and then he locked the door and kept the key.
Locked her in her room?
Yes'm, just like it was a jailhouse. She couldn't have got out nohow if it hadn't been for this child. I fooled him, the mean villain. Heh heh.
What did you do?
Me? I done try another key, that's what I done, and it fit.
You let her out?
Sure enough I did. She give me quarter, says she's mighty much obliged to me too.
Well, I should say so. And then what?
Why, and she skedoodled.
Did what?
She means she got away, left the house, didn't she?
She sure did, and that Mr. Smith, he still thinks she's there. I done fool him good, this child did.
You ought to be trashed for such meddling. I guess I'm kind of glad too, for I don't believe Miss Wendale ever done anything to get locked up for. Do you, Miss Marr?
Indeed I don't. She's simply the victim of some man who couldn't have his own way with her, is my opinion. But, Florinda, you should have told what you did before you left the house.
Me, miss? Mercy sakes, then I wouldn't have got ye nohow to this here theatre.
Land, did you ever see such a child? Well, I suppose there's nothing to be done except go back home.
Ain't we going to see no show?
Why, of course we ain't. The idea!
Why not? Now that you are here, I'll write you an order for a couple of seats and you can stay and hear me give tetrazzini cards and spades.
Land, do you do card tricks? I thought you just sung to him.
So I do. I only meant... well, you will see for yourself. Wait a minute.
Goes to table, finds pen and ink, writes few words on card.
Golly, ain't I tickled? We's gone see the show.
She dances about in high glee.
I don't know as we be any such thing. I ain't sure it would be right.
Florinda is about to weep.
Now, don't begin your blubbering. Maybe we'll stay, seeing it's dear Miss Marr sing. I do hope, though, they won't be none of that scandalous cutting up.
Pansy runs in center, fanning herself.
Oh, it went fine. Margie and...
Sees Miss Buzby and Florinda.
Excuse me. I didn't know you had company.
Why, it's Miss...
Pansy Purple. Miss Buzby, ain't it? How do you do?
Oh, thank you, and I hope I see you the same.
You do. Dandy. Say, Margie, I come in to tell you something. Somebody out there wants to see you.
To see me? Who is it?
Well, I guess it's kind of private. Said they'd like to see you alone.
To Miss Buzby.
Excuse me.
Goes and whispers in Marguerite's ear. Marguerite, rising, showing surprise.
To
Miss Buzby.
I am very sorry, Miss Buzby, but it is someone to see me on business, if you don't mind.
Not at all. Maybe we'll go right out and see the show.
But I'm afraid I shall not be able to do my act this afternoon. I am so upset, and Pansy, will you find Mr. Williams and tell him I can't go on till evening unless they put a couple of other acts in first? Tell him he'll have to do it, that's all. Tell him anything.
Oh, we'll fix that, me and Jimmie. Then I'll send that party up, shall I?
Wait. Miss Buzby, supposing you wait and see the show some other time.
Why, certainly. Of course we'd want to hear you.
I don't want to wait. You won't never bring me no more.
Yes, she will, Florinda. Leave that to me. Pansy, you take them in your dressing room a little while. I may want them here again in a few minutes.
All right. I'll see to 'em. They can watch the rest of the show from the wings.
You needn't expect me to get into no flying machine.
Oh, no, I didn't say anything about the flies. Come along, you'll be perfectly safe.
Golly, I ain't afeard.
Well, if Miss Marr says it's all right.
Why, of course it is.
Ushering them out ahead, aside to Marguerite as she follows them.
Gee, but ain't they rich?
Exit center. Marguerite stands center, looking after them. After a moment's pause, meets Lillian, who comes in heavily veiled. Leads her down to right center, offering a chair. Lillian still standing.
Thank you. How kind you are. I felt that you were my friend, and that I might safely come to you.
Lifting her veil and throwing it back.
Sit down.
Lillian sits.
Indeed you may, and you don't know how glad I am to know you feel that way. I told you to, and I meant it. I'm afraid you are in trouble?
Yes, great trouble. Danger, I fear.
Danger? May I ask in what way? Of what?
Lillian, shuddering.
Of prison walls.
What? Prison? You?
Starting back.
Ah, that startled you. And no wonder. Yes, it is true. I may yet be placed behind the walls of a prison, though I have committed no crime.
Rising.
Oh, Miss Marr, you don't know how much a woman can suffer and still live. I have been through the misery of a lifetime in the past few months. I need a friend, a woman's help, and I come to you because your eyes tell me that there is kindness in your heart.
Trust me, that is all I have to say. Let me prove to you that I am worthy of your confidence. Tell me, let me help you.
I will. I am in the power of a man who is seeking revenge. Once I thought he loved me, but I found him to be a villain. I was but a poor music teacher, he rich and influential. I was employed in the house where he lived, and when I told him I knew him for what he was, he took a coward's means of revenge. You can scarcely believe what I have to tell you, for it does not seem that a man who calls himself a gentleman could stoop to a trick so low.
Don't let that worry you. I can believe anything of some men. I know a few of the very kind you seem to have been up against. Tell me what his game was.
Well, a valuable diamond pin was placed in the pocket of my coat. No doubt my actions were suspicious, for in the horror that overcame me when I learned that the man I thought I loved, and had consented to marry secretly, was but a scheming villain, I was about to flee from the house in very shame of my position. But the pin had been missed. A hint from him caused me to be searched, and to my horror it was found upon my person. How I lived through that 1 hour I do not know. A maid in the house who was my friend and believed in my innocence helped me to escape.
And that's how you came to be at Miss Buzby's?
Yes, under an assumed name. But I was followed, watched.
By our absent-minded Mr. Smith. He didn't fool me much, slick as he thinks he is. Sometimes I can see through a 10-inch plank almost, and his little thin slab of a board was a cinch. Well, and this morning things came to a sort of climax.
Yes, I had an old friend, Mr. Townsend. At one time, in fact, we were much more than friends, but my foolish eyes were dazzled by things he could not promise me, and we drifted apart. In my desperation, however, I wrote to him for advice, though not at first telling him where I was. When I did tell him, he came to me at once, and was there this morning. I told him a part of my story, not the worst, and he insisted that I leave the house with him, go to a lawyer, and face the worst.
Well, that might be the best thing to do. Did you consent?
Yes, and was about to go with him when Mr. Smith whispered to me that if I attempted to leave, he would at once place me under arrest. Terror-stricken, I told Mr. Townsend to go, that I would wait till another day, and made him leave me. Then I went to my room, and I was locked in.
By that pesky Smith, of course. I could shake the daylights out of him, and I may do it yet. But our little black jewel came to the rescue.
Yes, Florinda opened the door, and I came to you. I didn't like to go to Mr. Townsend at first. I did not know which way to turn, except to take you at your word and ask your advice and help.
And you did the proper thing. I'm right in my element in a scrap, and I took a fancy to you at the first. You didn't hold off when you found I was an actress, and I surmised that you was in for it and might need a friend sooner or later. Well, it's sooner, but Miss Marguerite is on the job. Now as to this man, the villain in the play, how to foil him, that's the question. If this was a made-up melodrama, he would be sure to get his just desserts in another act or so, but it happens to be the real thing, and so it's not so easy. But we'll get the best of him yet. Just you let me get on his track. The thing is, where can he be found, and how can I get at him?
But I am afraid. There is so much against me, and I feel sure he will have no mercy. He is a proud man, and what I said to him made him swear that he would make me get on my knees to him and beg his pardon. But I would die first.
I should say so, but I don't think it will be necessary. We'll have to meet him on his own ground and see if we can't catch him in his own kind of trap.
But how? You don't even know him.
But I know men in general, and his kind in particular. Remember, I've had some experience with the creatures, and know what kind of bait to use. It may take a little time, but it will be worthwhile, and the climax will be worth waiting for. What I want you to do is give me his name and address. I'll find some way to meet him and make him sweet on me, and then... See?
Lillian has been seated left. Marguerite is center. She now goes to table, gets small piece of paper or card, and pencil or pen.
You write it down for me.
Lillian goes to table, sits, writes a few words, gives her the paper. Enter Pansy.
Oh, you're still here. What do you think? There's another caller. I don't see how so many folks got in behind. This one wouldn't, only I happened to be near the stage door and heard him ask for Miss Marr. And as I happened to know who he was, and that he was a friend of this lady's, I got the man at the door to let him in.
A friend of mine? Who?
Mr. Townsend.
Here? Why, how did he find out?
Oh, he went back to Miss Buzby's, smelt a rat, and followed the trail till he fetched up here. Seems he had an idea she'd come right to you, Margie.
Now I will tell him all.
Just what you ought to have done in the first place, if you know he's all right.
I would trust him with my life.
Well, that's all right, if he isn't too heavily insured. A man's a man, you know.
But they ain't all alike. There's my Jimmie.
Well, show him in.
Who? Jimmie?
No, Mr. Townsend.
Oh, sure. I'll show him in. And if he ain't the real cheese, I'll leave it up to you to show him up.
Exit.
Oh, I wonder how it will all end.
Pshaw, if we knew how a play was going to end, 'twouldn't be any fun watching it. Just you try not to worry and leave it to fate, the greatest playwright that ever stirred folks up in a plot, to see that it comes out as it ought to.
Looks out center door.
Here he comes.
Enter Jerome. He sees Lillian, at once goes to her, and is about to embrace her when she makes a sign and he sees Marguerite.
Go on, don't mind me. It's my cue to look the other way, and I always follow stage directions.
She turns her face so that she cannot see them. Jerome kisses Lillian.
Tell me when.
Now.
All right.
Lillian shyly.
Jerome, Mr. Townsend, this is my friend, Miss Marr.
They shake hands.
I've just been hearing about you, Mr. Townsend. This young lady needs somebody to look after her, and I think you look like the man for the job. Excuse me, I mean, who deserves the honor.
I am certainly the willing one. My application has been in for some time, and if she doesn't award me the contract, I shall think there is a higher bidder.
Jerome, you know.
I know you have kept me waiting long enough, Miss Contrary, and that the time has come when I'm going to have something to say.
It shall be as you wish. Only, you don't know all, Jerome. But I mean to tell you, at once.
Tell me you love me, and that's all I ask.
They are left, absorbed in each other. Marguerite, who is right center, now carelessly glances at the paper on which Lillian has written, utters an exclamation of surprise. They turn and look at her.
What is it?
Oh, nothing, only Well, things are coming faster than I expected. As for that little matter we were just talking about, Miss Wendale, don't worry. I think I see my way out. That is, our way.
Lillian going to center.
But what do you mean? What has happened?
Never mind, you will know soon. All is, I ask you to leave things to me, and I think I can promise results.
To herself, again looking at paper.
Well, if that don't take the cake.
Miss Marr, you speak in riddles, and in fact, I am pretty much at sea as to the whole thing. Don't you think it is about time I came in for a little information?
I certainly do, and Miss Wendale is the one to give it to you. Miss Wendale, take him aside somewhere and tell him the whole business. Then tonight, by 11 o'clock, both of you meet me at Miss Buzby's. I may have something to tell you.
At Miss Buzby's? But you see, Mr. Smith may...
Don't you fret about Mr. Smith. We want him to be there, too, and a few others. Just see that you are, and I'll attend to the rest of it.
But you are sure?
That no harm will come to you, so I want you to trust me.
I will.
Goes and gives her her hand.
And so will I. I don't know what it is all about, but I do believe that you know what you are doing, and that my little girl here is safe in your hands.
You can just bet she is, and what's more, when I start out to do a thing, I generally most always do it.
And you're an actress?
Well, opinions might differ on that point. At least I can gurgle a tune or two and wear a few clothes.
How can we ever repay you?
Pay? Just you wait till I've done something. But if I do it, why, when it's over, you can give me a piece of your wedding cake to dream on. That'll be sufficient. And now I guess I'll have to ask you to well, in plain words, to get out. It's not very polite, I know, but you've got a few things to talk over, and I've got plenty to do, so if you don't mind...
Why, of course not. We ought to have gone before. We will see you tonight.
Sure as fate. Goodbye.
Gives him her hand. He goes up. Lillian goes to her.
Goodbye. And don't worry.
I'll try not to. You're so good.
Kisses her. Jerome and Lillian go out center. Marguerite stands looking after them.
I declare they got me going. I didn't know I could be such a mush.
She has previously laid the piece of paper on table. Now goes and takes it up. Looks at it, smiling significantly. After a moment's pause, goes to door, calls.
Jimmie. Hey, Jimmie, come here a minute.
Enter Jimmie.
Want me?
Wouldn't call you if I didn't. Where's Pansy?
Oh, she's out there with the bunch. That Marden fellow is still hanging around, and some of the goyles are jollying him. He's got the cash, you know. He's got his eye on my Pansy, but she's going to give him the call down good and hard. What do you think? He asked her to go and take a ride with him in his auto tonight, and a supper afterwards. I've got a notion to punch his face.
Not yet a while. Pansy is going out with him for that ride first.
What?
That's what I said, Jimmie. You want to help the good cause along, don't you?
What good cause?
Never mind now. Just take my word for it. It is a good one. And leave it to me. I want to see Pansy a minute.
You may know what you're driving at, but I'm blessed if I let Pansy go out with that masher. Why, only a little while ago, you told her she mustn't, and made the dickens of a fuss.
I know, but things have happened since then. Go and call her.
Oh, well, I suppose I'll have to, but if you ain't the limit.
Goes to center door.
There she is. Say, Pansy. Hey there, come here.
Pansy runs in.
Well, what?
Miss Ma wants you.
Now what have I done?
Nothing, Pansy. It's something I want you to do.
Well, fire away. Anything you say.
Wait a jiffy, till you hear what 'tis. I ain't quite made up my mind to it yet.
Pshaw! I ain't afraid. Margie knows what she's about. I'll promise before him to the half of me queendom. Speak on.
I want you to take that automobile ride with Marden tonight, and...
You? Oh, go on. You're jollyin'.
No, I mean it.
But you just told me I mustn't. And after the calling down you gave me, I was prepared to turn him down so good and hard that he wouldn't bother me again for one while.
Then you haven't told him yet.
Why, no, but I was just a-going to.
Then go and tell him you will go. Be nice to him and pull the wool over his eyes.
But what for? I guess you've gone daffy or something. But if I do it, what then?
Bring him to the house, to Miss Buzby's, by 11 o'clock tonight and see what happens.
Well, if you don't beat the Dutch. Shall I, Jimmie?
It's beyond me. If she says...
I do say, and I depend upon you, Pansy. Get him there by hook or crook. If you care for me and want to do something good, trust me and don't fail.
Seeing Jimmie knows and all, I will.
Good. You won't regret it.
Consider it done. Here goes for my new role of siren.
Puts on a sentimental smile and a coquettish manner. Throws a kiss to Jimmie, waves her hand at Marguerite, and exits.
And I suppose I've got to grin and bear it. All right, I'll try, but it's the hardest part I ever played.
But it will be the best, Jimmie. Believe me.
I do. Ting-a-ling, the curtain's up. Proceed.
Exit. Marguerite goes up, looks after him a moment, then crosses to write. takes the slip of paper from table and looks at it.
Felix Marden. Oh, it's dead easy.
Falls into chair, laughing heartily. Curtain. End of Act 2. Act 3 of Miss Buzby's Boarders by Arthur Lewis Tubbs. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Act 3. Scene. Same as Act 1. Discover Mr. Pettifer with newspaper, seated left, dozing. He snores. Mrs. Pettifer sits by table, right, with crochet work or sewing. She looks across at him severely before speaking.
Alexander Pettifer. Alexander Pettifer, are you deaf?
Huh? Did you...
Speak. I should say I did, half a dozen times. If you're so sleepy, why don't you go to bed?
Why,
Yes, I know you are. You're afraid you'll miss something. You think there's something going on around here, and I think so too. They seem terribly anxious to get us off to bed. But for one, I'm going to set up as long as I please. You might as well go, though.
But I don't
suppose you do, but you'd better go just the same. If there's anything to tell, I'll tell you in the morning.
Rises, goes to him, takes his paper, makes him get up, and urges him toward right.
I ain't...
Yes, you are. It's time you went to bed. You know you need a lot of sleep, and if you don't have it, you're sure to feel mean the next day. I never saw such a man for needing plenty of sleep.
Enter Miss Buzby, center door.
Good night.
Oh, I ain't going to bed yet. Mr. Pettifer is, though. Say good night to Miss Buzby, Alexander.
But I don't...
He says he don't want to go to bed, and he's just as sleepy as he can be.
I ain't...
Yes, you are. Don't tell me. I guess I can tell. Come along.
Well, I guess it's about time. It's after 10:30.
I hope you don't call that late. Of course it is for Mr. Pettifer. He's such a sleepyhead. But as for me, why, I ain't a mite sleepy.
Neither am...
I know you. You'd say you wasn't if you couldn't keep your eyes open. And then tomorrow you'd be as cross as a bear. Come along.
He rebels feebly, but she gets him off right. Miss Buzby looks after them, laughing, and just as they disappear, Florinda enters left.
Oh, is that you, Florinda? Come here a minute.
Florinda, close to her.
Yes'm?
See here. Now, you pay attention to what I say. Don't you tell a soul about what happened this afternoon down at that theater. Mind you, not a living person.
La me, no ma'am. I won't, nor a dad one neither.
Well, see't you don't, 'cause if you do, I don't know what I won't do to you.
Oh, I wouldn't tell nothing. No, sirree. You can trust this child for that, yes'm. What is it you don't want me to foretell?
Why, anything. About where we went, or what happened, or what was there, or anything about it. Land, if Miss Pettifer was to find it out, you might as well print it in the newspaper.
What news, Papa?
Well, any of them. She's the greatest woman I ever did see for finding out all that's going on.
Yes'm, I done told her so this morning.
You... what?
I done say to her, I says, I heard you say that she didn't never miss much what was going on.
You did?
Yes'm, I told her. She didn't seem for to like it very much.
Well, I declare if you ain't the worst. I've got a good notion to start you off bagging baggage.
La, Mum, I wouldn't have any. Ain't got no bag, just a kind of bundle.
Well, I'll bundle you off then the very next time you say anything like that to any of my boarders. It's a wonder she ain't flung it up at me before this. Now, I'm going in to see Miss Wendale a few minutes and see if I can't quiet her down a little. She's just about crazy with all that's happened and what's coming.
Goes right.
Blast sakes, Mom, what is it?
Never you mind. What you don't know won't hurt you, and it's a good sight safer. Always you watch the front door, and as soon as Miss Marr comes, you let me know. Now remember what I said, and don't you tell Miss Pettifer or anybody a thing. Don't you forget now. Not a single person.
Deedy, missus. I won't. Hope to die across my heart.
Miss Buzby and Dor left, looking back.
Don't talk that way. It's wicked. You don't hope any such thing. Just see if you can't keep your eyes open and your mouth shut. If you manage to do that, I'll think the millenniums come sure enough.
When did it come? I ain't seen nothing of it.
My land, you don't know beans.
Exit left.
Yes, I does too, and I eats 'em with poke. Let me see. I got to keep my mouth open and my eyes shut.
Opens mouth wide, shuts eyes tight.
No, that ain't it, 'cause I couldn't see to open the door or nothing. No, it's keep my eyes open and my mouth shut. This away.
Shuts mouth closely. Opens eyes as wide as possible.
Golly, that's gonna be showed enough hard work for this child to do. Guess I got to do it, though. I reckon else I gwine catch the dickens.
Enter Mrs. Pettifer right. She sits right, not at first noticing Florinda, who stands up left. After a pause, glances up and sees her. As soon as Mrs. Pettifer looks at her, Florinda clenches her mouth and opens her eyes very wide, staring straight ahead.
Oh, you're there, are you, Florinda? My goodness, what's the matter? Have you got a fit?
Florinda continues as before, pointing first at her mouth and then at her eyes.
Are you crazy?
Florinda shakes her head vigorously, but does not change her expression.
Come here.
Florinda goes and stands close to her.
And stop acting as if you was. Stop it, I tell you.
Rises, shakes Florinda, who explodes into laughter.
There. Now you tell me what all this nonsense means.
Golly, I couldn't keep him shut and open no longer. I just thought as how I'd sure burst.
What do such actions mean, anyway? I've never seen such foolishness. What excuse have you got for acting like that?
Dee, that's according to the orders, Mom.
Orders? You must be crazy after all.
No, indeedy, I ain't. Miss Buzby, she done told me to do like that.
I don't believe any such yarn. The idea.
Yes'm, she done told me to keep my eyes open and my mouth shut.
Oh, she did. What did she tell you that for?
'Cause she didn't want me to tell nothing.
Oh, I see. And of course you mustn't.
No, especially you, Mom.
Mrs. Pettifer, again seated.
Indeed. Especially me, eh?
Yes'm. That's what she say. She say might just well go for to put it in the newspaper.
Mrs. Pettifer at first showing anger, then changing her tactics, scheming to worm the information out of Florinda.
So that's it, is it? That's the second time she...
Pauses, then cunningly...
Well, of course, Florinda, if she told you not to tell, you mustn't. You must be a real good girl, Florinda, and do as you're told.
Yes'm.
Shuts mouth and opens eyes as before.
Dear me, child alive. She didn't mean it that way. She just meant figuratively speaking.
No, she didn't say nothing about no figures. She just told me I mustn't tell a single person.
Well, you see, single people are so uncertain, as a rule. And now I guess she forgot that I'm married, you know. And whatever you tell me is perfectly safe. Oh, no, not that I want you to tell me anything, Florinda. Of course not. Don't you dare tell me anything I don't know.
Florinda shakes her head, about to go out center.
I hope you had a nice time this afternoon, Florinda, down to the...
Pauses naturally, looking on floor. Florinda falls into trap.
To the theatre, ma'am? La, now how do you know? Miss Buzby told me not to tell. What did you lose, Mom?
Looks on floor.
My needle.
Pretends to find it on lap.
Oh, here it is. Thanks. The theatre. Oh, yes, of course. The one where Miss Marr is, I suppose.
Yes, we done see the show, too, from the side of the stage. Lestways, we seen a part of it. Golly, but it was scrumptious. A gal there, she done dance right up on the tips of her toes and kick up one foot.
Gives a high kick, dancing about.
Just like that.
Stop it. You needn't show me any more. I never saw anything so scandalous. Was it Miss Marr done that?
Oh, no, ma'am. We didn't see her, 'cause she had so much company in her dress-up room. Miss Wendale and...
Miss Wendale? Was she there, too?
Yes, and that our man that come here to see her this morning, him, and golly, I guess something's been going to happen, and Miss Ma, she got a lot to do with it, you bet.
I'll warrant she has. Of course, you don't know anything more.
I guess I does, but I ain't going to tell nohow. Day's coming here tonight, I reckon, and something sure to happen. But I don't know what, and if I did, I wouldn't tell.
No, that's a good girl. Don't you say a word. You're a real good girl, Florinda, and tomorrow I'll give you 5 cents.
Oh, will you, Mom? Thank you. I's gonna buy me a new hair ribbon, yes'm. I's a good girl, I is. I's gonna figure to keep my eyes open and my mouth shut, and...
Indoor, center.
I ain't going to tell nobody nothing.
Opens eyes and shuts mouth as before. Bursts into laughter and runs out center to left.
So, pretty goings on around here. I guess she told me enough. Miss Wendale and that man, eh?
Rising.
But of course it's none of my affairs, and I never meddle. But I must say, I never saw such doings.
Enter Mr. Smith, center door right.
Oh, Mr. Smith, that you? You're so absent-minded and such a reader and all, that I don't suppose you've noticed anything. But I must say, I don't hardly see how you could help it. Even such a, well, even a person who don't seem to take any more notice of things than you do.
Mr. Smith, who still has his book and on occasion pretends to peruse it.
You are a trifle mistaken, madam. I sometimes see more than people give me credit for. For instance, I have not failed to see that you are a person of very keen discernment.
Sir?
No offense, I assure you. I was only thinking that, well, that you seem to have the, suppose we say, the detective instinct.
What? Me?
Yes, you. For instance, if I, now, should happen to be, suppose we say, a detective...
You don't mean...
No, of course not. I only said supposing. Therefore, just supposing I was a detective, and you knew something that I ought to know, I am sure you would think it your duty to tell me, and say nothing about it to anybody, wouldn't you?
Well, you see, I can't say as to that, because I don't know anything I think you ought to know, and if I did, I'd keep it to myself. So I hope you're satisfied.
Entirely. I was quite satisfied all the time that you didn't know anything, and...
Indeed. Well, I know you haven't got much manners, for one thing, and that I wouldn't believe you was a detective if you was to tell me so, for they're supposed to have some sense. And as for you, I never saw such impudence.
Exit right.
Missed it that time. I thought she was just the kind of woman who couldn't keep a thing to herself.
Looks off center door to left.
Ah, well, there are others.
Calling.
Florinda, Florinda, I say, come here a minute.
Goes back to right center. After a brief pause, Florinda enters, center door left.
You're calling me, Mr. Smith?
Yes, Florinda. Come here.
She goes over by him.
La, Mr. Smith, what you want? You trying to find out something too? Dee tain't no use. I don't know anything about nothing.
You know where Miss Wendale is, don't you?
Sure I does. She's in her room now. Just got back a few minutes ago. Oh, golly, I forgot. You all didn't know.
So she has been out, has she? But I thought she had been in her room all day.
Yes, sir. You thought you knowed a lot, but that's once you done got fooled. Guess you forgot some doors have more'n one key to 'em. I done let her out.
You did, you little imp. You may get put in jail for that. Don't you know you've been interfering with the law?
Florinda, thoroughly frightened.
Oh, sir, this child? Oh, sir, Dee, I didn't do nothing. Me? Please, Mr. Smith, don't put me in the jailhouse. I didn't mean nothing. Please, sir, forgive me this time. Oh.
Be quiet then and listen to me. There is just one way you may be able to escape. I'm not sure, but if you do exactly as I say, I may get you off.
Oh, Mr. Smith, please try to, and I'll do just so you says to. Indeed I will.
Well then, listen to me. You must let me know where Miss Wendale went after you let her out, and all you know about what happened.
Oh, Mr. Smith, I can't do it. I promise, hope to die, cross my heart, I wouldn't tell. I couldn't do it, nohow.
Very well. Then of course you know what to expect.
Oh, massy sakes, don't do it. Don't send me to the jailhouse. I's gonna tell. Yes, I is. Oh, golly, I'm so scared.
There's nothing to frighten you, child. Nobody shall know that you have told me anything, and I'll give you something handsome, too.
Hope 'tain't your photograph?
No, I mean money. $2, perhaps.
Sho, go along. I's gonna be rich. Miss Pettifer done promised me 5 cents, but I didn't tell her nothing. No, sir, not a thing. She done try to make me, but I wouldn't tell her.
That was quite right, my girl. You were wise not to tell her.
Oh, I didn't tell her. She gone and guessed it, though.
Guessed what?
Why, so we been to theater where Miss Ma sings at, and Miss Wendale come, and that man what's a sweetheart on her, and Miss Ma, she's going to have 'em all here tonight for something.
Ah, that's it. Do you know what for?
No, sir, I know nothing about that. I only heard Miss Buzby and Miss Wendale talking about it. Miss Ma, she going to see it.
At what time, do you know?
Guess 'tis 'bout 11 o'clock. Days gone. I'll be here. Yes, sir.
Very well, Florinda. That will do. You may go now.
Ain't you gonna ask me?
Ask you what?
What y'all want to know. I ain't told you nothing.
Oh, that's all right, Florinda. I don't want to know anything.
Golly, I's glad of that. 'Case now I ain't gon' break no promise, as I'm Mr. Smith.
I hope not, Florinda. Not for me, at any rate. But there's one thing, Florinda. Don't tell anybody about our little conversation. I mean what we've been talking about just now, you know.
Oh, no, sir. I ain't gonna say a word, not to nobody. No, sir.
That's right, Florinda. You're a real good girl.
About to go. Florinda going after him.
Mr. Smith?
Mr. Smith turning back.
Well?
I's just wondering, sir, if you forgot about that $2, sir?
Oh, to be sure. Well, you see, Florinda, you didn't tell me anything, and now I don't see why I should give it to you. Still, I think I will. That is, if you will make it a point to say nothing about what we have been talking about, and promise to come and tell me anything of importance that you happen to find out. Is it a bargain?
It sure is, sir. But I gets the 2?
Certainly. Here is 1 on account.
Takes bill from pocket and gives it to her.
You shall have the rest tomorrow, if you still deserve it.
Oh, I was gonna serve it all right. Yes, sir. Don't nobody catch this child telling nothing. No, sirree.
Exit center door left.
I guess it's about time to bring matters to a climax. They are beginning to get on to me around here, and the first I know, the bird will have flown.
He starts to go out, but meets Marguerite, who enters from right. He is compelled to remain as she speaks.
Oh, that you, Mr. Smith? Or whatever your name is. Don't go. Stay and be sociable. You know that's your strong point.
He doesn't answer. There is a pause as she comes down.
See, you talk so much nobody else can get a word in edgeways.
Edgeways? Not you. You are in the habit of making your speeches decidedly blunt.
Ha, 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 good. Why, you're looking up, getting quite witty, I declare. First, you know, we'll be getting you a place as one of those funny monologists in our show. How'd you like it? Better than detective work, I should imagine.
Indeed, Miss Marr. You are jumping at conclusions.
Am I? Well, your conclusions seem to be in sight. That is, the end of your rope, see?
No, I do not. You speak in riddles.
Well, I'm not telling you the answer. Guess it. It'll give your, brain a little needed exercise.
Your sarcasm is entirely lost on me, Miss Marr. I will bid you good evening.
About to go.
Oh, pshaw, don't get huffy. I didn't mean anything. If you had any gumption, you'd talk back. All I meant was that watching a defenseless female must be rather tame business.
Mr. Smith showing chagrin in spite of himself.
So that's what you have in your head, is it? Well, you are on the wrong track. And as for the young lady, I am sure she seems to have a very able defender.
On the wrong track, am I? But you seem to know who I mean, all right. Come on now, Mr. Smith. Own up. I'm on to your little game, and you might as well quit talking around the bush. What's the charge? Theft?
Mr. Smith betraying his surprise.
Madam, do you mean?
Not madam yet, if you please. Miss. I mean that you know as well as I do that she never stole that diamond pin, or the man who is paying you for this job knows it, and that it is merely a case of persecution. I dare say the villain doesn't intend to prosecute or anything like that, only frighten her and have his mean, low-down revenge. Oh, there are such men or such apologies for 'em, and you're helping just such a brute in his attempt to do a contemptible trick. Ain't you ashamed of it?
Ashamed of what? There is every evidence of guilt, and in my business...
Stops, too late, seeing that he has betrayed himself.
Ha! So you acknowledge it. It is your business. Well, I'd be ashamed to own it, anybody that's as easy as you are. Pshaw! I'm more of a detective than you myself, any day. I know as much about this case as you do already. More, I guess. But you see, I don't go snooping around trying to make you think I'm absent-minded or daffy or anything like that. I talk right out and am willing to meet you fair and square. Come, drop your silly disguise, fight in the open and show your colors.
Mr. Smith, apparently chagrined, but still subterfuging.
You make me laugh.
Glad to afford you any amusement, but I may make you laugh on the other side of your mouth before I get through with you.
He acts as if about to go, but still lingers.
Oh, you can go now. I'm through with you for the present. When I want you again, I'll send for you.
Thanks. So kind of you. I appreciate it so much that I promise, whenever you want me, I shall be entirely at your service.
Exit right.
Thanks awfully.
Enter Miss Buzby, left.
Oh, Miss Buzby, you're just the person I want to see. Everything's all fixed if Pansy doesn't fail us, and she won't. I'm sure of it. She said she'd have him here by 11, and she'll do it if she has to gag him and bring him tied up in a bag.
My land, I hope she won't do anything like that. It would ruin my house.
Oh, she won't. You needn't worry. Where's Miss Wendale?
In her room. That nervous. The prospects of meeting that man face to face has upset her something terrible. I don't know, but it'll be too much for her at the last minute. She was asking about you. She wants to see you.
Tell her to come here, will you please?
Don't you think you'd better go to her room? It's more secluded.
No, send her here, please.
Of course I will, if you say so.
Exit right.
Whew, things are working up. I hope I don't get a case of stage fright at the last minute. Come, Marguerite, brace up. You've got to see it through now, and there's no use getting nervous. Only I do wish Pansy would come. It's time.
Enter Lillian, right.
Oh, here you are. How are you feeling?
As if something terrible were about to happen. How can I ever face that man?
Face him? Stand right up and look him in the eye. There never was a man yet a woman couldn't get the best of if she does that. Show him you ain't afraid of him. That's the way.
But he has me in his power.
If you let him have, yes. But meet bluff with bluff. Make him think you are a match for him, and the first thing you know, he'll scoot and be glad of the chance. That's the nature of the beast. You can't tell me anything about men.
But they are not all alike.
Oh, no, of course not. There is always an exception, and I'm willing to admit that your Jerome is absolutely perfect. If you had listened to his advice and faced the whole thing, you might have been out of this whole mess long ago. But no, you had to wait for another woman to take a hand and show you what's what. Well, I'm glad if I can be of any use once in my lifetime. And I only hope I won't kerflummox in the last act.
You are afraid?
Marguerite, putting her arm about Lillian protectingly.
No, little Miss Timidity, I ain't afraid. And you mustn't be.
I'll try. I don't know why you are such a friend to me, but you inspire me with confidence. And I feel as if you could do anything.
Well, not quite everything, but it's a pity if I can't do one poor specimen of a man after all the practice I've had.
Pansy is heard laughing off left.
That's Pansy Purple's voice. I wonder if he...
Pansy runs in center door from left.
Hello, Margie. How'd you do, Miss Wendale? Glad to see you. Well, we're here.
Then he...
Sure he is. What'd you take me for? Why, it was too easy for any fun. Even the first time I dropped the bait. Say, he sets 'em upright, too. We had a grand ride and a dandy feed. Seems almost a shame to let him spend so much then take advantage of him, don't it?
Such a man as that? No. Besides, we won't hurt him. I knew you wouldn't fail us, Pansy, but I must confess I was just a little bit nervous.
What, you? Think of that. Well, I don't know what it's all about, but I took your word for it that it was in a good cause and let it go at that. Worst of all is Jimmie. He's violent.
Why? I thought he understood.
How could he when I didn't? I told him that it was to oblige you and to help Miss Wendale, but he couldn't quite swallow such a pill as seeing his Pansy picked by a man like Marden and worn in his buttonhole all this time. What do you think? He followed us every step of the way.
Oh, I am so sorry. How can I ever repay you for such kindness?
That's all right. Glad to be of service. Jimmie will be, too, when it's all over and he knows what it's about. Only, you see, it was sort of going it blind and quite a dose for a fellow what just got engaged.
Well, I guess it was, Pansy, but you won't be sorry, either of you. So Jimmie followed you, did he?
Well, rather. Into the restaurant and all. I almost had a fit for fear Marden'd see him and spoil everything. But he didn't, so it's all right. But, say, I left him out there in the hall.
Mr. Marden? Oh, Does he know I am here?
Goodness, no. Didn't even know where he was going. He thinks he's just making me a little visit. Want him in here now?
No, No, I am afraid.
Now that's no way. You've got to face him and have it out. So you might as well do it first as last. Just walk right up and say, "How dare you, villain?" and see how quick he'll wilt.
But you don't know him.
Don't I? Trust me. I've got a trick or two up my sleeve, and I'll be in the background ready to come to the rescue. Just you retire a minute and brace yourself, then take the plunge. It'll all be over in a minute, just like a dip into cold water.
Goes to Lillian, puts an arm about her.
Oh, yes, you can. You've got to.
Lillian gaining courage.
I will. I will not be so weak and cowardly. Yes, I will see him, and...
Good for you. I don't know what it's all about, but I do know that he ain't so much to be afraid of. I'd like to see a man give me any of his sass. He'd get it back twice over. Shall I produce him?
Yes, Pansy, send the beast in here.
To the beauty? All right.
Exit center door left.
But you are sure?
I'm sure we are doing what's best. And when we do that, it pays to leave the outcome to a higher power that knows how to fix things up right. Only we've got to do our part, and this is where you must do yours.
They go off right upper entrance. After a brief pause, Felix enters center door left. He looks about inquiringly.
Why, there is no one here, and Pansy said...
Down center, again about to go up, when he sees Lillian, who appears right and stands facing him. She is pale and tremulous, but evidently determined to have it out with him. As he recognizes her, he is taken aback, but quickly recovers his self-possession.
So, Miss Blake, we meet again?
Yes, Felix Marden. We meet again. You have been looking for me, and here I am.
Yes, I suppose you have found out that there is no use trying to escape me. When I make up my mind to a thing, I never stop until that thing is accomplished. You defied me. You turned love to, well, a determination to get even, and then you thought you could outwit me. But, you see, it is impossible.
I see that no means are too low for you to use them in having revenge upon a woman who never did one thing to harm you. You won my confidence, and almost my love, and I discovered just in time that you were worthy of neither. Then, because I refused to have more to do with you, you sought a despicable means of revenge.
Well, all is fair in love and war, and...
There is nothing fair about you. You are a villain, a cheat, and a coward.
Coward? You will see.
Yes, I shall see. Is it not cowardly to place a detective upon a woman's track, to threaten her with prison for a crime she never committed, all for the means of a petty revenge? Well, I shall try to escape you no longer. I have suffered enough, dreading what you might do. Now do it. I want to know the worst.
Felix, changing to a softer, insinuating mood.
But I don't want any revenge, Lillian. All this has been only a means to bring you back to me. All I want is you. You.
He goes to her, attempts to embrace her. She recoils slightly, but, for a purpose, pretends for a moment to encourage him.
Can you profess love to me, after attempting to prove me a thief?
They are standing down center, he facing left, she so situated so that she can see Marguerite, who stands at extreme right.
Ah, but that was merely a ruse, dear. At first I sought revenge, then I thought to bring you to my feet to win you by craft. But it was all because I love you, because you are the only woman I ever loved.
Putting his arms about her. Lillian with her eyes on Marguerite, who nods to her as if telling her to keep on.
Then you acknowledge that I am innocent? That the charge of theft was only a trick?
Yes, only the foolish device of one who was mad with love and jealousy.
drawing her to him and trying to kiss her.
Darling.
You coward!
Suddenly tearing herself from his embrace, she slaps him full in the face. He is at first too amazed and stunned to speak, staring at her. Then, livid with rage, he seizes both her wrists, bending her form down in front of him, so that she nearly sinks to the floor. She cries out with pain, but he, beside himself with rage, holds her thus.
So that's your game, is it? I'll make you suffer for this.
Lillian, struggling in vain to free herself.
Let me go, I say. You hurt me.
Hurt you? I could kill you, but I won't. No, I'll bend you to my will yet, or land you behind prison bars.
Releases her.
Thought to get the best of me, did you? Indeed, we'll see.
Lillian, clasping her hands, now weak and almost collapsed.
But you acknowledged my innocence.
Ha, to you, but you can't prove it. There are no witnesses.
Marguerite, coming forward, taking Lillian in her arms and facing him boldly.
That is where you are mistaken, Felix Marden. There is.
Oh, you? You were listening, eh? So she has a champion?
Yes, and a good one, too, you brute. Your little game is up, Mr. Marden, and the quicker you make yourself scarce, the better.
You think so, do you? Well, I don't. It isn't ended yet. Perhaps a jury will have something to say about it.
A jury? Good. I would love to go into court and tell a few things I know about you. It would make something real interesting for the newspapers to print.
Sure. You can't scare me. What do you know?
Plenty. And I'm not the only one in my business who could rake up old scores that wouldn't be much to your credit. I think you had better drop it, Mr. Felix Marden, if you know when you're well off.
You meddling fool!
They are center. He raises his hand to strike her, just as Jerome enters center and steps between, pushing Felix back.
What does this mean? How dare you, sir?
And how dare you interfere in what doesn't concern you?
It does concern me. Apologize to this lady, or I will show you how much I am concerned.
Marguerite, laughing.
You see, Mr. Marden, I have a champion myself. Come, make your little apology and save yourself more trouble.
Felix, sneeringly.
Apologize? I? To a vaudeville actress? Not if I know it.
Jerome, who, upon hearing Felix's name, glares at him savagely.
Marden. Is that the name? Marden?
That is my name, sir.
Yes, Mr. Townsend, this is the man.
Scoundrel! Villain!
He seizes Felix by the shoulders. They grapple and begin a struggle, just as Mr. Smith enters right. He runs and separates them, assisted by Marguerite.
What, Marden?
Baxter, what are you doing here?
Attending to business, I hope. If I can see you alone a minute?
Oh, it isn't necessary, Mr. Not Smith, but Baxter. He knows she is here, and that you're here, and that we're all here. Quite a merry little party, isn't it?
Felix to Jerome.
I'll settle with you later.
No, you won't. It's to be now.
No, Mr. Townsend, he isn't worth it.
He's worth the worst trouncing a man ever had, and I mean to give it to him. I've kept in the background long enough, seems to me, and now that I have found the man, I mean to make up for lost time.
He is about to seize Felix again. Mr. Smith steps up, but is pushed aside.
Stand back! If he is half a man, let him defend himself.
Just as he is about to grapple with Felix again, Lillian steps between them.
No, Jerome, for my sake.
Jerome desists, steps back, and Lillian goes to him. He takes her in his arms. Felix, who cannot help showing that he is relieved at his escape, falls back and is approached by Mr. Smith, who talks to him in pantomime. Jerome and Lillian are center, Felix and Mr. Smith right center, Marguerite left center.
Well, what next? Whose cue is it?
Enter, center door left, Pansy, followed by Jimmie.
Jimmie, behave yourself. You won't do any such thing.
Don't you believe it. I'll...
Sees Felix.
Oh, here you are. You're just the guy I've been looking for. I owe you one.
He goes to Felix and is about to strike him, but is hindered by Mr. Smith.
Aw, go on. Mind your own business. Let me swat him.
Marguerite, taking hold of Jimmie and pulling him back.
That'll do, Jimmie.
This is no time or place to settle this affair.
Felix to Mr. Smith.
Oh, get out. I'm through with you and the whole business.
He bows, goes to center door, meets Miss Buzby as she enters from left, pushes past her, and goes out. She comes down.
For the land's sake, what's the matter with him? He looks as if he could murder somebody.
Well, he won't, never fear. And now, Mr. Smith, Baxter, or whatever your name is, don't you think you might as well go, too? There doesn't seem to be much more for you to pry into around here.
Mr. Smith, smiling with mock politeness.
I go, though I assure you, it pains me to tear myself away from such charming and brilliant company.
Going to write.
Yes, it must. Sorry we can't return the compliment.
He has dropped his book. She picks it up, goes and offers it to him.
Here, don't forget your book. You might need it in your next case.
He ignores her, goes to center door, runs into Florinda as she enters. He then turns, goes to write, runs first into Mr. Pettifer, then into Mrs. Pettifer, finally gets past them and goes off. Florinda going to write and calling after him.
Mr. Smith! Mr. Smith! Don't you forget that other dollar.
Florinda, come back here. What do you mean by such actions?
Well, he said he's going to give me another dollar, and I wants it.
Mr. and Mrs. Pettifer, so absorbed in themselves that they at first pay no attention to the others, come down to right center. Jerome and Lillian are extreme right. Jimmie and Pansy up right center. Marguerite, center, well up. Miss Buzby and Florinda up left. Mrs. Pettifer, as they enter and come down.
Why, Alexander,
I told you I didn't want to go to bed. I said I wouldn't go to bed, and I didn't go to bed.
But Alexander, you know.
I know I'm old enough to know when I want to go to bed, and a few other things, and you might as well understand it.
Alexander Pettifer, how dare you?
Be still. You've had your say long enough, and now I'm going to have mine.
Bah.
She keeps trying to speak, but he shuts her off.
What's that? Don't tell me. After this, I, Alexander Pettifer, am going to be the boss. Understand? The boss.
But Alexander,
No, you won't. And I won't. And you can't make me. No matter what it is. I'm the boss from now on. And I mean it, Mrs. Pettifer. I mean it. Every word of it.
Oh, dear. Oh, Alexander, what's come over you? You never acted like this before.
She sits and weeps.
The worm has turned. Good for you, Mr. P. Glad to see you be a man.
About time, I should think. I've often thought, Mr. Pettifer, you was a pretty poor specimen.
Mrs. Pettifer, jumping up and facing her angrily.
Don't you say a word against Mr. Pettifer. Don't you dare. He's my husband, and as good a man as ever lived. You'd be mighty glad to get one half as good as he is, you know you would. But you never will, never. You're an old maid, and you'll stay one till your dying day. Come, Alexander, we won't stay here and be insulted. We'll leave this house first thing tomorrow morning. That's what we'll do.
Taking Mr. Pettifer by the arm and leading him to write.
Come, dearie. Come along with your own little wifey.
She urges him off right, and as they go out, he looks back, chuckling to himself, and slyly winking to the others.
Well, I declare, little wifey indeed. Old maid, am I? Well, I don't deny it, but it ain't my fault. I mean, it ain't from the lack of chances. I guess I'm better off than some woman's got husbands, when you come right down to it. Husbands ain't the only thing worth living for, though...
Looking at Jerome and Lillian.
I'd know, but they be, sometimes. At any rate, some men are better than others. I must say, Miss Wendale, you seem to have got one of the good kind.
Thank you. I'm sure that's the kind she deserves, and I shall try to be, well, not the worst husband in the world.
One of the very best, I am sure, Jerome dear, and better than I deserve, after so long failing to appreciate you.
Never mind, darling, we won't speak of that. Everything is all right now.
Kisses her.
Maybe we'd all better retire.
No, indeed. We want you all to stay to our wedding.
Why, Jerome, when?
Tonight, now, if we can get a minister.
Guy, I can't get one. He lives right across the street. I'll go and get him.
Oh, I couldn't. I never heard of such a thing.
There's no time like the present, and the sooner the better. I feel just like a wedding, so long as it isn't my own.
Well, I guess you're all crazy. It's after 11 o'clock. The minister's gone to bed.
Well, he can get up, can't he?
I'll get him up all right. See if I don't. Golly, ain't it fun? You just wait. I'll brung him.
Starts to go out center. Jimmie running after her.
Say, tell him there'll be two.
Why, Jimmie Spangler, there won't any such thing.
Yes, there will too.
To Florinda.
You go and get him, and tell him it'll be worth his trouble.
Sure I will. Just you wait. Heh heh heh.
Exit center door left.
Jimmie, I think you're just terrible. I hope you don't think...
Now don't you say a word. I'm like Mr. Pettifer, the boss.
But Jimmie, this is so sudden.
Oh, chestnuts.
Suddenly kisses her.
There.
Better make sure of him while you've got the chance, Pansy. Jimmie's worth tying up to.
Oh, well...
She blushingly falls into Jimmie's arms. Miss Buzby, sinking into a chair, right center.
Well, if I ever. 2 weddings, at 12 o'clock at night, too. I might as well go out to business. I won't have any boarders left.
Oh, Miss Buzby, I'm not married yet, and I don't expect to be. You'll have me.
And us. We're going to come here and live. Eh, Pansy?
This domicile suits me. You can count on us, Miss Buzby.
And us, if...
Looking at Lillian.
Yes.
There, see that? And we'll be the model happy family, see if we're not.
She goes and stands behind Miss Buzby's chair, with a hand resting affectionately on her shoulder.
And I'll be a mother to you all. Bless you, my children.
She is visibly affected.
And I'll do my best to make it so you'll never be sorry you came to be Miss Buzby's boarders.
Marguerite stands behind her chair, Jerome and Lillian at her left, Jimmie and Pansy at her right. She reaches up both hands, which they grasp on either side, bending toward her with a show of affection. She looks up at them, smiling. Curtain. End of Act 3. End of Miss Buzby's Boarders by Arthur Lewis Tubbs.